because you were not smart enough?
I don't know if I wasn't smart enough, but based on the curve and what I was competing with other individuals who had different educational opportunities and teachers. I mean, I'm coming from, the LA Unified School District. I mean, so at the time, I think LAUSD was still pretty good. But I went to all white schools from high school up through college.
So you got a good education. Why couldn't you get into the school based on your own talent?
Oh, he's low-key frying her. He's low-key frying her right now. He's low-key frying her.
Absolutely.
And where's the proof of that?
All around. I tell people often now, in hindsight, one of the things that I wish I would have been more cognizant of was the white privilege at UCLA that was sitting, right next to me. For Black people, I believe white privilege is something to leverage.
What is it though? I don't see it anywhere. What is it?
Huh?
What is it?
How don't you
For
not
people
see
like
white
me
privilege?
who don't see it.
How do you not see white privilege?
Because it doesn't exist. That's
yes,
what
it does.
So what is it exactly?
Things, I believe white privilege is just the ability just to be free and white and not have the same type of social, economic, and social ills as Black people have to deal with. I mean, there's no white racial profiling. White people don't get pulled over by the cops just because they're white. They have the ability to, show emotion and love to their sons without being emasculated. There's all kind of examples of white privilege. Absolutely.
So if you guys don't know what's going on in this debate, Jesse Lee Peterson is debating a college professor on the existence of white privilege, and she believes that white privilege exists. He believes that it doesn't exist. And some reasons why she says it exists is because, one, white people don't get pulled over based off of their racial color. They don't have to give into, she said, racial stereotypes of some sort. Also, their white men are able to show emotion to their children without any racial, divide there. I would just say I'm a little confused on that last point. White fathers being able to show emotion to their sons and Black fathers not being able to show. I don't know where that point is coming from, because Black fathers do show emotion to their sons. I really don't know where that point is coming from. I'm not gonna lie. And also racial profiling. I don't know the statistics on if white people get racially profiled, but I would just argue, does racial profiling only exist for Black people, or does it exist for Asian people, or does it exist for Indian American people? Did you just draw the line at Black people? I really want to know the answer to this question, because every time we talk about the white privilege debate, we always negate every other race, meaning that there are Arabian Americans, there are Indian Americans, there are Asian Americans, there are South Americans, there are a lot of people. But we kind of just ignore them when we talk about this specific debate. But anyways, not going to say too much. Let's get into it.
Why don't you Black? How come you don't believe white privilege exists? What you see?
Well, because I am Black in color, but I don't have that dark mentality that most Black people have.
Clearly.
I see, she said clearly,
Mm-hmm.
I see that white people have the same struggles and things that we have, in that
What type of struggles do
they have to
they
make their
have?
marriages work. They have to make their children, help their kids grow up in the right way so that they can earn a living and be independent.
But they also have the majority of their fathers at home.
Right, and the reason for that, it's starting to change somewhat now, but the reason for that is because they are taking responsibility for that, whereas Black men and women are not taking responsibility for that, as they did prior to the Civil Rights Movement. Black people are blaming it on their lack of self-control and self-containment. They're blaming it on white people, while white people are working hard to keep it going.
I do believe that there is a need for Black people to be held more accountable.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that doesn't excuse racism, that doesn't excuse institutionalized racism, that doesn't excuse...
But there's no such thing as that.
Yes,
it's an illusion made up by Black people and their leaders.
No, it's not. It exists.
Well,
Sorry.
where's the proof of it, though?
What do you mean, where's the proof of it?
There are many kids who are getting into, Black kids who are allowed to get into these universities around the country, right, based on affirmative action. And because of affirmative action based on their color. That's discrimination based on color, and that's wrong. And these kids are getting in, but they're not earning their way. So when they fail, they feel less than before they were allowed to get in based on color.
I'm a proud product of affirmative action. When I went to UCLA, it was because I was an affirmative action student.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And I think I turned out fantastic. So a lot of my peers who were having challenges getting into some of these predominantly white institutions, the affirmative action was great. My father went to Harvard. He was one of very few blacks.
Was he affirmative action person?
I don't know if he was. That was back in the late 60s.
Well, then he wasn't. He earned his way.
So, that being said, I still believe that affirmative action helped me get into UCLA, and it gave me access.
You would not have gotten in there on your own because you were not smart enough?
I don't know if I wasn't smart enough, but based on the curve and what I was competing with other individuals who had different educational opportunities and teachers. I'm coming from the LA Unified School District. So at the time, I think LAUSD was still pretty good. But I went to all white schools from high school up through college. So
you got a good education. Why couldn't you get into the school based on your own talent?
Oh, he's low-key frying her. He's low-key frying her right now. He's low-key frying her. He's basically saying that she got into school she didn't earn her way into, and that is completely unfair because of things such as affirmative action, or I'm assuming he's also referring to DEI policies. And she doesn't really have an answer for this, and she's a teacher. She doesn't really have an answer for this. I will say this. I think they're kind of arguing. I think she's trying to defend the wrong thing. She's trying to imply that affirmative action and, I guess, DEI policies do not disproportionately help African Americans. They do. They do help African Americans more than they would help Caucasian Americans and more than they would help specifically Asian Americans. You could argue it's not for the reasons you think. Meaning, if you look at Ivy League institutions, when affirmative action was really pumping through society, African American students who went there did, on average, have lower test scores than Asian American and white American students. That's just the truth. However, you could argue that could be in place due to something like slavery, and it is a reparation. That argument would make more sense to me rather than saying that it doesn't help black people. Because even with that argument, you could say, for example, slavery lasted 256 years. Then reparations should last 256 years in the form of this. That argument, although people would obviously disagree, some people would disagree, some people would agree, that argument would at least be more logically accurate rather than implying that affirmative action doesn't disproportionately help black students. That argument would be more logical. Because even if you look at a school like Harvard, which was founded in the 1600s, during the 1600s, slavery still existed. You can say because of that, we weren't given the opportunity to attend these great Ivy Leagues because we were literal slaves. We deserve reparations for so many years, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, however, trying to imply that reparations doesn't help us and there's a white privilege, that argument is not going to get, pushed through the way that you think it is, and he's making you look a little foolish. But let's continue.
Maybe because I didn't have some of the opportunity.
But you had the opportunity.
First of all,
you had the same opportunity those white kids were having.
Not necessarily. I had different teachers. I had different resources.
So you went to a white integrated school.
I'm talking about going into these other into UCLA. I still had to be able to deal with some of the issues and going to predominantly white schools.
Like
but
what?
I still had to be able to compete.
Like what?
What do you mean, like what?
Some of the issues going to a predominantly
I would graduate from University High School, and at the time they didn't have an African American student union.
An African American student union?
At the school.
Well, that's a good thing.
They didn't have one.
That's a good thing.
Why?
Why do you need something like that?
They have Asian student unions. They have Jewish student unions. They have all kind of different.
Did they have white
unions.
student union?
They need student union. They own the whole school. So
but the kids didn't own the school. The kids didn't.
But I'm saying there's nothing. I don't think there's nothing wrong with having a segregated, population of students who just want to study together, or work together, or to be able to.
Would you be in support of a white student union?
Yeah, of course.
It would be okay with you?
Yeah, why not?
But most blacks don't feel that way.
I think all cultures should be able to segregate and to be able to work within their cultures and network within their own cultures. Absolutely.
So now I'm getting a little confused because now you're pro segregation. And these arguments always tend to confuse me because the logic there is so insane to me. For example, you brought up affirmative action and you brought up white privilege and how it's a sort of reparation for us. And we should be able to go to these schools because these schools do not have spaces for black people, and these schools are predominantly for white people. Then he asked you, okay, should these schools also have white clubs predominantly for white people? You said yes. That confused me because you said the schools are owned and ran predominantly for white people, but then you also are saying that there should be white clubs at the schools. But then before that, you said the only reason black clubs exist is because the schools do not have a space for black people, so they need the club. So does that logic also apply to white clubs? All I'm saying is it's just like you're doing, it's like a little bit of like gymnastics, like mental gymnastics to defend this. And I'm trying to be fair, I really am. And he's not really making a stance, he's more so asking questions. He obviously disagrees with the concept of white privilege. But your logic is kind of jumping from pole to pole here. But anyways, let's continue.
Does racism exist?
I believe racism does exist.
And where's the
absolutely.
proof of that?
You just see it all over in the country. That we're proof of it. In terms of just
What do I see?
Disproportionate in the economics with black people.
But that has nothing to do with racism.
It does. Racism is about power. It's about who's in control. And black people can't be racist because we're not in control. We're not in control of the educational system, some of the social organizations and things that run this country. We're not in control. Racism is about power.
But you would be in control of your own life if you had good parents, if they taught you how to be independent, if they taught you how to build, how to take care of. I've noticed that the reason I left where I lived over there in the Crenshaw district is that once the white people left, because once I moved there, when I first moved there, it was mostly whites. But once they left, as they did in Gary, Indiana, and other places, the blacks turned it into a ghetto. A beautiful area went to hell in a handbasket, so I got out. But if blacks had more character and they were taking care of themselves and being responsible and buying land and teaching their children,
that has to be taught.
Then right, so that has nothing to do with racism.
But that has to, of course, that has to be taught.
So it's not racist. It's not white people's fault that you're not teaching your children to do that.
It has to be taught, but it also has to be learned. We need to stop pretending like black kids don't have any resources. I hate that narrative. She's implying that, taking care of your land and knowing how to be financially literate in these areas, that has to be taught, and is not taught to our kids because of racism. Who's the number one teacher of children? The number one teacher of children has always been and will probably forever will be their parents. It's not the school system, it's not the government, it's not the neighbor, it's the parents. That's the number one teacher of children, point blank period. So you're saying it's not being taught, it's not being learned by generations. There are cultural shifts, there are cultural dynamics of every single, not only race, but even community in America. So when you're saying it's not being taught, it is being taught to some communities, and some communities are striving. It's not being taught or learned to other communities, and therefore those communities are not striving. However, the internet does not ask for your race before you look something up. The internet does not ask for your gender and area that you're from before you look something up. You're telling me that black kids do not have the same Google, they don't have the same YouTube, they don't have the same Chat GPT as other races of kids? I'm not buying it. They can look it up. They can learn this stuff if they truly desire to, if that was the cultural norm in the neighborhood. But that's just not the truth. That's just not literally accurate. But let's continue.
No, but it's not. If the parents don't know.
They don't know. But that's not white people's fault, though.
But if they go into some of these institutions, these predominantly white institutions, they are targeted. They don't have the same opportunities because of their color. It's true. I mean,
so then why go in there then? Why not go to an all-black school if you feel that?
Some people do choose to do that.
I'm sorry?
Some people do choose to.
That's you see a lot of these black kids going to these white universities, And then they force their way in by saying, I need affirmative action. Once they get in, now they crying racism. Why do you want to force your way in with the people you think are your enemies, and you're still complaining once you get there?
I don't think people are forcing their way. Does
They are.
affirmative
Affirmative
action even
action
exist?
is forced based on color.
Does affirmative action even exist? Are people getting in based on affirmative action?
Yes.
Today,
Otherwise, they wouldn't be there.
The way Trump has it down, he's just leveled the playing field. So it is going to have to be more about being able to be competitive.
Hallelujah.
Let me know what you guys thought about this video. This is very interesting. She said affirmative action doesn't exist. I've never heard that point of view before. I've never heard anyone say that it doesn't exist, because it literally exists. Whether or not you agree with it, I've heard debates on that, whether or not people support or do not support affirmative action. Nonetheless, comment down below what you think. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys later. Peace.